Misophonia. It's a word most people have never heard, yet millions live with it every single day. And if you've ever felt a sudden wave of rage, panic, or disgust from something as tiny as someone chewing gum, tapping their pen, clicking their nails, sniffling, whispering, or even breathing too loudly, then what I'm about to tell you may finally explain everything. Imagine this. You're in a quiet room, trying to work or relax, and suddenly someone nearby starts chewing with their mouth open. Nothing dramatic, nothing dangerous, just chewing. But inside you, it feels like someone is scraping a metal fork across your brain. Your heartbeat spikes, your shoulders tighten, your body goes into fight or flight mode, and the only thing you can think is, make it stop. For some people, this reaction isn't an annoyance. It's a full psychological and physical storm, and that storm has a name: misophonia. And today, you're going to understand exactly why certain sounds trigger this uncontrollable response, where it comes from, how it affects your brain, and what you can actually do to manage it. Stick around, because the explanation is deeper, stranger, and more fascinating than you think. Now let's start with the most important truth. Misophonia is not about the sound itself. It's not the chewing, it's not the tapping, it's not the breathing. It's what your brain believes those sounds mean. Because in people with misophonia, the brain's threat detection system is extremely sensitive. Not logically, but emotionally. The sound becomes a perceived danger. Your amygdala, the emotional alarm center of your brain, activates instantly, long before your logical thinking catches up. Most people can tolerate annoying sounds, but for someone with misophonia, that sound hijacks the emotional brain, creating a full-blown survival response. Imagine trying to relax while your brain is screaming danger because someone is cracking their knuckles nearby. This is why misophonia isn't a personality flaw. It's not oversensitivity. It's not immaturity. It's a neuro-emotional reflex you can't simply turn off. And once you realize this, the entire experience starts to make sense. But here's where things get even more interesting. Misophonia triggers usually start between ages 8 and 14, and they often begin with someone very close, like a parent or sibling. Why? Because our brains map safety and danger through early emotional experiences, and repeated exposure to certain sounds during moments of tension, stress, or conflict creates a subconscious association. For example, if you grew up with a family member who chewed loudly at the table during stressful dinners, your brain may have linked that sound to discomfort or emotional threat. Later in life, even in a quiet, harmless environment, your amygdala still reacts as if the past is happening again. This is why misophonia triggers are so personal. Two people can hear the exact same sound. One barely notices, and the other feels like they're about to explode. The difference lies in emotional conditioning. Now, every 90 seconds, I want to give you something actionable, something you can do immediately to understand and manage this condition. So here's your first value drop. Pay attention to the emotional meaning behind your trigger. Ask yourself, what does this sound remind my body of? Not your memory, your body. Because misophonia isn't stored in your thoughts, it's stored in your nervous system. Identifying the emotional layer under the sound will help you regain control later in this video when we talk about retraining your brain's automatic response. But before we go deeper, let's address a question many people ask. Am I crazy? Am I overreacting? Why do such small sounds feel so big? Let me reassure you with neuroscience. When you experience a misophonic trigger, your brain activity spikes in 3 areas: the amygdala, the insula, and the autonomic nervous system. These reactions aren't chosen, they're automatic. It's the same biological response someone might have to a phobia, except your trigger isn't spiders or heights, it's everyday human sounds. the body goes straight into escape mode, making you feel trapped, irritated, angry, or overwhelmed. Some people even describe it as their brain locking onto the sound and refusing to let it go. That's because your insula plays a role in interoception, the perception of internal bodily states. In misophonia, it becomes hyper-aware. The sound doesn't just seem loud, it feels internal, like it's happening inside your head. Now let's talk about the types of triggers. Misophonia isn't limited to chewing or tapping. It can include whispering, throat clearing, nose sniffing, coughing, slurping, clicking, typing, swallowing, pen tapping, nail scratching, and even repetitive motions like leg bouncing. Some people are triggered by low-pitched sounds, others by high-pitched ones, some by patterns, some by rhythms. And here's something most people don't realize. Misophonia can also apply to visual triggers. If hearing someone chew drives you crazy, watching them chew can create the same effect. If tapping drives you crazy, just seeing someone's hand preparing to tap can trigger you. That's because your brain connects the sight with the expectation of the sound. It's a predictive threat response. And here comes your second value drop. You are not imagining the physical sensation. Misophonia often triggers real bodily symptoms: tightness in the chest, increased heart rate, heat in the face, clenched jaw, stomach tension, and a need to move away immediately. This is the fight or flight system turning on. Once you understand that your reaction is biological, not personal, you can finally remove the shame around it. And removing shame is the first step in taking away its power. Now, let's explore something deeper. Why do these reactions become so intense over time? Because misophonia creates a feedback loop. The more a sound triggers you, the more your brain anticipates it. The more you anticipate it, the worse the reaction becomes. And soon, you don't even need the sound. You just need the possibility of the sound. You walk into a room and someone has gum in their mouth. You react even if they're not chewing yet. You hear a small sniffle. You immediately tense for the next one. The brain becomes hypervigilant. This constant state of alertness can be exhausting, emotionally draining, and socially isolating. Many people avoid restaurants, classrooms, offices, or even family dinners because the fear of hearing their trigger becomes as powerful as the trigger. Here's another value drop. Avoidance increases sensitivity. The more you escape the sound, the more powerful it becomes. Not because you're weak, but because your brain learns that avoiding the sound equals safety. So exposure feels dangerous. To break this, you must train your brain to experience control during triggers. And yes, we'll talk about how to do that before this video ends. Now let's dive into one of the most misunderstood aspects of misophonia. It's not about hatred of sound, it's about loss of control. When a trigger hits, you feel trapped, powerless, unable to escape. Your body reacts before you can. And that sensation of powerlessness is often the true source of anger or panic. This is why misophonia sufferers usually react more strongly around people they know, like family members or partners. You feel like you can't tell them to stop. You feel guilty for reacting. You feel conflicted because it's a person you love. That emotional conflict makes the reaction stronger. Around strangers, the trigger may still happen, but you don't have the same emotional entanglement, so the reaction might be lighter. Now we're moving into the solution phase. You've heard the science, you've seen how the brain reacts, but now we need to answer the big question. What can you actually do about misophonia? Is there a cure? Can you retrain your brain? The answer is yes. Misophonia can be improved significantly, and in some cases almost eliminated through nervous system training, cognitive reframing, and controlled exposure exercises. But the key is gradual change, not force. Here's your next value drop. The first technique is called sound layering. It works like this. When you know you're going to be exposed to a trigger, like chewing, you don't eliminate the sound. You soften it. You introduce neutral or pleasant background noises. Rain, white noise, ocean waves, ambient music. You're not hiding the trigger, you're giving your brain a competing sound to shift focus. Over time, your nervous system stops reacting as violently because the trigger no longer feels like an attack in silence. The next technique is emotional labeling. When you hear a trigger, instead of reacting instinctively, you verbally label the emotion. This sound makes me feel trapped. This triggers anger in my chest. This makes me feel overwhelmed. When you do this, something powerful happens. The prefrontal cortex, the logical thinking part of your brain, activates and calms the amygdala. You interrupt the automatic loop. Another strategy is physical grounding. When a trigger hits, move your body in a controlled way. Press your feet into the ground, stretch your fingers, roll your shoulders back, or take one slow breath. This sends a signal to your nervous system that you are safe and in control. And here's one of the most effective long-term solutions: retraining your emotional association. Remember earlier when I said misophonia isn't about the sound, but the meaning behind the sound? This technique changes that meaning. You start by playing a recording of your trigger sound at an extremely low volume, barely audible, while simultaneously doing something calming or enjoyable. You're pairing the sound with safety. Over time, your brain rewrites the association. The trigger loses its emotional punch. But let me be very clear. Healing misophonia doesn't mean loving the sounds. It means not being controlled by them. You may always find chewing annoying. You may always dislike tapping. That's okay. The goal is to eliminate the panic, the rage, the fight-or-flight response, not to change your preferences. Now we're approaching the final stretch of the video, and here's the most powerful lesson of all. Misophonia is not a weakness. It is a sign of a highly attuned, highly sensitive nervous system, one that detects patterns, subtle changes, and emotional information faster than the average person. In fact, studies show that people with misophonia often score higher in empathy, perception, creativity, and emotional intelligence. Your brain isn't broken, it's responsive, intense, strong. And with the right techniques, that strength can become a superpower rather than a burden. So let's close with your final value drop. If you want to improve your misophonia, focus on reducing your nervous system's sensitivity in general. Good sleep, less caffeine, calming breathing exercises, mindfulness, and reducing daily stress all improve your brain's tolerance to sound. A calmer nervous system equals fewer triggers. And now you've reached the end of one of the most misunderstood psychological conditions people face today. But now you understand it. You see where it comes from. You understand how your brain reacts. And you have tools to take control. Thank you for watching. If this helped you understand yourself or someone you love, stay tuned. There's much more to discover, and your journey to a calmer mind is just beginning.